Okay, welcome everybody to the premier inaugural event of stand-up history in Cincinnati. We're going to kick things off with our hostess with the mostest tonight, Molly Wellmann. We're at Myrtle's Punchhouse here in beautiful Walnut Hills. Molly's going to start us off. One of the things that people may not understand about Molly unless they spend some time listening to her expound over the bar as she's working on things is that it's true. She is a hostess beyond compare, but she is a scholar. The time she spends researching all the ingredients, the time she spends researching the traditions that are involved in Cincinnati saloon keeping are amazing, and she's going to be talking about one of her favorites tonight, Molly Wellmann.
Hi, everyone. I think it's so cool. It's so cool to be doing this at Myrtle's, which isn't like my other home. One of my other homes. I have bars for homes. It's kind of true. I am fascinated with Cincinnati history, and especially the drinking in Cincinnati. We drank a lot in Cincinnati. I mean, we drank a lot. And I'm very proud to be continuing this tradition of making sure that everybody is still drinking in Cincinnati. And hopefully we can make some more history with that drinking in Cincinnati. But there's one particular, there's a lot of great characters in Cincinnati who had us drinking for so many years. But there's this one guy in particular that just kind of sparked my interest, and I just had to know more about him because his bar was so absolutely beautiful. And it was also, his bar was something that I almost dreamed that I could do for Japs. If you've ever been to Japs in over the Rhine, I would love to almost, bring the spirit of Theodore Foucar into my bar. So, Theodore Foucar. Has anybody ever heard of Theodore Foucar? No. Well, some people, but not everybody. Well, let me tell you about this guy. Go ahead, Greg. This is Theodore Foucar. Theodore M. Foucar. He actually was born and raised here in Cincinnati. He was born over in the Mohawk area, which is kind of near Brighton and Clifton and, the north part of over the Rhine. He also went to school there. And as he grew up in Cincinnati, eventually his first job was actually as a conductor on the Vine Street horse car line. Can you imagine that? Imagine all the people he would have met. Eventually, he got married. He married another Cincinnati woman. Her name was Mary Joker, and she became Mary Foucar. And he got into another line of business. He got into the restaurant and cafe business, and this would have been in probably the 1870s, 1880s. And his first saloon, you can go ahead, was actually on the northwest corner of 2nd and Main Street. It's kind of like now, it's like catty corner from where the baseball stadium is. So now there's cars whizzing by on Fort Washington Way where his bar was. But you can just imagine just getting into the bar business, the restaurant business, the cafe business. This would have been his first endeavor. He did pretty well, so he moved up the street. And he moved up into the Traction Building, which still stands in Cincinnati, on Walnut Street and 5th Street. All right, and he did it. He had a partner, and he put this cafe together, and he did really well, so well that he actually bought his partner out and moved across the street and opened Foucar's. This was the entrance to Foucar's. Isn't it glorious? Isn't it beautiful? These beveled glass and wood, mahogany wood, doors and entrance. It was just walking into a palace. You can only imagine. And he actually had the signs, his name, made bigger on the side. The first sign he didn't like, he had it redone. He is that kind of guy. A guy after my own heart. When you walked into this bar, you would walk in, and to the left, go ahead. you would walk in and you would see this incredibly beautiful, opulent, polished mahogany bar that was inlaid with black and white onyx and marble, and it was a sight to be seen. There were big plate glass gold gilded mirrors hung around in back of the bar and around the bar. This bar was actually created by a Cincinnati company called Clock and Brothers. I have a brochure. I think it's the next one. Nope. We'll get there. On the other wall, and you could go to that one, the other wall, he had a fantastic collection of art. He loved to collect art, and especially art that was by Cincinnati artists. He became very good friends with the bohemian types here in Cincinnati. He became friends with the artists. Henry Farney, Henry Sharp, John Redding, Frank Duveneck. In fact, he had this incredible picture that caused such a stir in Cincinnati, and we'll get to this in a minute. It caused such a stir with the ladies of Cincinnati by Frank Duveneck that hung on this far wall in Foucar's. It was called Siesta. And the ladies of the town felt that you're going to corrupt our husbands and our sons with this picture. Oh my God, clutch the pearls. Oh my gosh. But so in Cincinnati, we had a lot of saloon fixture builders. We had a great history, an industry of furniture making here in Cincinnati. And the Clock Brothers and Company was one such company. And they actually built Foucar's bar, along with many other bars in Cincinnati, but especially Foucar's, which was such a piece of art in itself. So it's really neat that everything stayed in Cincinnati. This is Frank Duveneck's Siesta. And it's a beautiful, it's an oil pastel paint or drawing that he started in Paris and then finished here in Cincinnati. Some say that it was finished on 4th Street in the Pike Theater. He had a studio there. And it was kind of a hush-hush having this, paying this woman to take her clothes off so he could, draw her. But we'll get to more about the siesta at the end. In the back of the saloon, if you walk through the saloon, you would come to this other room. This Rathskeller is what he called it. And this was a room that was lined with black walnut paneling. And he had mounted elk heads along, the top. And there was this incredibly huge fireplace on the far wall that just dominated the entire room. And you would go in here, and there would be a marble floor, and in the floor he had embedded in the marble floor $25 gold coins. Pretty freaking opulent. You can just imagine. You would sit down, you would order a drink, order a beer, and when you did that, there would be a rush of waiters that would come out, and they would plop down a big tray of meat and cheeses and pickles and mustards and the best roast beef sandwiches you could ever imagine. And you would get those all for free as you drank at Foucar's. Everyone who was anyone hung out at Foucar's. So you can imagine. So this is what I love about, you could go ahead. So this is what I love about Theodore Foucar. No, not just that he was this saloon man who had a saloon. He believed in a few things. He believed that there should be no gambling in saloons, that was very bad for business. And if something went wrong, or some working man lost all of his salary, all the saloons would be blamed for the downfall of the saloon. He also believed that they should close the bar at midnight. Working men and barmen, they should go home and get a good night's rest so they could wake up in the morning and go to work and make enough money to go to the saloon at night and not be out till all hours of the night gambling away their money. But he was not so thrilled with some other laws that came into play. You have to remember, this is between the turn of the century. He started his bar in 1902, and then Prohibition. At this time, you had a lot of Prohibition and temperance movement people hooking up with government, hooking up with trying to pass different laws to curb drinking or pretty much eliminate drinking everywhere. Well, one of the laws that they've got to put into place at the state level was not to be able to offer a free lunch or free food when you bought a beer or when you bought a drink. And Foucar wasn't having that. He's like, I make the best roast beef sandwiches at my bar, and I am not going to take that. So he actually got himself arrested twice for serving a free lunch at his bar. But he fought it tooth and nail, and he finally found a judge who found it to be unconstitutional, and he was able to serve his roast beef sandwiches, which is great. Would have loved that. So Foucar also, he was very much a sporting man too. He was into boating. He actually had a 55-foot boat, a 30 horsepower engine boat, you can imagine. And he was an very active member of the Cincinnati Gymnasium Boat Club, which was a thing here. And he would conduct over all of the boat races on the river. Apparently, there were a lot of boat races on the river, and they would actually build scaffolding so there could be thousands of spectators to watch these big boat races on the Ohio River. And Foucar was very active in doing this. He was an avid hunter and an avid golfer. He was a member of the Western Hills Country Club, very proud member of the Western Hills Country Club. And he was a member of the Elks Club, number 5 in Cheviot. So, yeah, he did a lot of really cool in Cheviot, yeah. So he did a lot of things with the community and on his own. So go ahead. So eventually, this is the cool cartoon of Foucar. Eventually, he had to shut down the bar. And you can go ahead. He's the next one. For Prohibition, he couldn't serve drinks anymore, and he wasn't going to stand by and just give away free roast beef sandwiches. So he shut down the bar. He and his wife lived above the bar. They had no children, and so they lived in an apartment above the bar. And so they ended up moving out of their apartment, and they auctioned everything off in the bar. And I've talked to a few people who actually have pieces of Foucar still, which I think is really, really neat. And then I go weak in the knees. I'm like, I have to see that. They ended up getting passports and traveling all over the world for a good part of Prohibition. They really did. They traveled to New Zealand and Egypt, and they would go visit their nieces and nephews all over the country. And finally, when they came back, go ahead, they settled. Oh, you can go back one more. Sorry. They settled down in Avondale at the Bellevue Apartments, which are still standing. And I have friends who live there, and now that I know that Foucar lived there, I'm like, oh my God, you know who lived here? So cool. And lived there for a while. He was still an active member at the Western Hills Country Club, and in 1933, he went to the club. That day he wasn't feeling very well in November, and he decided not to play golf that day because he wasn't feeling so good. And he decided to go home and maybe take a nap, and on his way out to his car, he collapsed from a heart attack and died. So I believe it was November 4th. Go ahead, you can hit it. November 9th. Is that 9th? Sorry. 4th. 4th or 9th. 1933, he passed away, leaving Mary as his widow. His wife Mary died in 1951. She eventually moved into the Netherland Plaza and passed away there many years later. But he's well known, and people all over the United States knew of this opulent place, you can hit it again, called Foucar's. And this is a really cool drawing of the Rathskeller that he was so proud of. So that's Foucar, and he was a really cool person here in Cincinnati. Thank you so much.